this is Harriet Grayson, your host and producer for Community Culture Showcase. And welcome as we are about to end the year 2014, and it certainly has been an interesting one, certainly for me personally, for the country, for the world. And so I'm always enlightened and actually feel glad when I can have the opportunity to talk with a poet, someone who's really in the arts and has a feel for them as we end the year and begin with new hopes for 2015. So I'm very happy to present Judd Rosen, who is a local poet who lives in right near the westerly Pawcatuck border and is actually considered a Connecticut resident. So Judd, welcome to my show.
Harriet, boy, this is going to be fun.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
I might get crazy.
That's all right. That's what we love to hear. We like a spontaneousness. That's what we love here on the show.
Okay, you'll get it.
So we're going to have, Judd's going to share with us a number of his poems, and he has been very careful to also provide us some photographs. So we're going to get a really interesting show today as we start to close the year. And one of the things that's of great interest to me, and Judd has talked to me about this before, is that Judd has kind of learned his trade, so to speak, and kind of enhanced it and improved it and had the opportunity by joining a writers group. And this writers group happens to be a great community asset. It's Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center. Does a lot more than having writers groups. They provide all kinds of social services. And so it's interesting that for people out there who want to study writing, who want to get a kind of a feel for it, many community groups, including the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, provide opportunities for people to kind of learn how to write, and it has a pretty prescribed way. I can say personally now, I've never been to the Pawcatuck Community Center to do anything of this kind, but when I wanted to start to do some creative writing, I actually joined a writing class at a community college. And
you'll be happy to know that I've read a couple of your books, Harriet.
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
So that's how I started to get involved in writing. Was I joined a creative writing class at a local community college, and I had the students there. You know, the one thing that they always tell you is that you can't be too critical. So constructive but not critical. And I had a divine teacher who actually was a published poet. And so it was a great opportunity. And from that, I started to write books, and I actually write some fiction under a pen name, Anastasia Goodman, because it's about Russian Americans. So I had to have a name Anastasia, as Russian as you can get. And then Goodman happens to be my maiden name. So that's how I got involved in writing. So when I heard about Judd and his experience with the neighborhood, Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center, I said, this is a great opportunity for people watching the show to be inspired. Judd's poems are actually quite wonderful, but it doesn't matter. It's just an opportunity for people to sit down with people who are like themselves, who want to share their writing and get a feel for people's reaction. If they love it, that's great. If they don't love it, that's okay too, because you are your own artist. So with that, I'd like Judd, start by reading us your first poem. Tell us, if you can, just a little bit about it. And I know that you have a particular literary, I don't know, trick would be a harsh word, but it's a literary thing that you do that makes your poetry different than anyone else that I know of. So tell us a little bit about it, and then read us the poem.
Well, Harriet, first I wanted to say something about the Pawcatuck Neighborhood Center's group. It meets on Fridays at 10:15, usually gets finished about noon. And it's not a group where people are learning about writing. It's a kind of a lifestyle reading of your own work. And what happens is David Madden, who is a local author, chairs the group. And we have between maybe 15, 20 people that show up, a lot of repeats. They're mostly mature people who have a lot of life experiences. And so David starts by asking a question or giving a prompt. Let's write about this today. And so the group writes on a very timed basis for 20 minutes almost exactly. And at the end of that period, around the table, we read our work. Some of it's really good. Some of it's good. And some of it is very personal. So after a few years of this, you know too much about the people around you. Harriet, I'm telling you, you know a lot too much. But it's fun because these experiences that people have in life are the kinds of things that a poet or a writer would write anyhow.
Sure.
When I read your books, they're things that you are interested in, not just the reader wanting to know about it. There were things that you experienced and you wanted to write about. So jumping into the writing schedule, I'm the only person that writes this crazy, wild prose or herky-jerky, I call it, kind of writing. Strangely enough, I try to write about my family, my grandparents, my children, my wife. Sometimes I give each of us strange names. But in the beginning of each of the poems, I have this idea of a 2-line couplet. And they're not going to really mean anything to the audience now, because they're 2 rather disjointed sentences. They mean something to me, and at times I've written about these 2 lines, a separate poem, if you will, about each of these sentences. So it's a kind of a characteristic, like maybe somebody would be a jeweler or an artist, and they would put their name on something, but they might have an insignia of some kind that they put on that the viewer doesn't appreciate or doesn't understand, but it's something that they do to make their work their own. So as silly as it is,
no, it's a style. It's a certain kind of style, and it's to be admired, because there are lots of there are not lots, but there are certainly writers out there that have a particular kind of style, and this is the way of your personalizing your work. So it's not merely any old poetry, and in fact, I think that you actually use it on all your poets,
on
all your poetry.
every poem that I've written, or everything that I've written like this, during the time that David Madden has had the opportunity to allow us to get together, I've used these 2 sentences. And actually, I might try to suggest why they're there. You know.
Give us the lines, because they're
Okay,
interesting lines.
let's say the lines.
Tell us the lines.
Okay, the drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. Silly, but they mean something. My background, I'm born in Chicago, came to Connecticut, Rhode Island area about 25 years ago. Finished working, owned a home in the Bahamas with my wife, and we live mostly in the Bahamas and some in Connecticut now. So during that time in the Bahamas, I began to do research on cultural history things. And part of what I learned about was a woman who lived in New York City at the time when women's work was somewhat in the home, in the 1900 to 1920 time. But she, like many New Yorkers, were curious about the world around them. And they spent a lot of time going in places of in the world, not as experts, but as people who were interested in a subject. And she, interested in a subject, went to the Bahamas and recorded by gramophone record stories that were being told by old Bahamian men and women. And they're funny stories about things that happened to them.
Right.
But when storytellers tell stories in the Bahamas, there's a big commotion before they start. People are talking like we do in a restaurant, ready for someone to tell a story.
Right.
And in order to get the quiet of the crowd in what we used to call in the Bahamas, talk old stories or talk old stories, the person to give the story would make a 2-line shocking statement.
Okay.
And I know you have that statement there, and maybe we'll talk about it later. But it's a 2-line statement that hushes the crowd and gets them ready for what they're going to do.
Okay.
Now, my lines aren't as good as the other ones, but that repetition of lines in Bahamian storytelling is normal. Hushes the crowd and gets ready.
And gets them prepared.
So you asked me, this first poem is called 13th Ain't So Bad.
Okay, let's hear it.
So this is a story about my grandfather. Mm-hmm. Okay, 13th ain't so bad. The drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. It wasn't my choice. How lucky could a boy be? Sitting on the toilet, really high, perched on 3 phone books, Chicago Yellow Pages, the R.R. Donnelly ones, screaming like an idiot, the first haircut, those curly locks, so sticky and wet at birth, ripped and snipped and superglue came much later. Bathrooms so clammy, so shower curtain, so damp, walls that vibrate to screams, why me? Grandpa Sam was a real barber, the highest barber in the city, when the Palmolive building was the biggest in the Midwest. 30 stories or so, when the spinning light on top round and round like an airport warning. He was the highest. It was said so in his ad in the yellowed pages. Come and enjoy the highest barbershop in the city. 13th floor, corner of Lake and Wabash. It really wasn't concluded, but enough. How lucky could a boy be, forced to look in that small little signal mirror? Oh my God! Finally, he could see his years, John Boy Judd, that's me. Love, it came later. Tears came and went. Haircuts were king. I had the highest grandpa. Such a love I had. Round and bouncy and soft smile, chubby fingers that smelled like talc. He was mine. My only one, so high. Checkers was his game. A real pro. They talk of him even today, a legend. Today talk at the Mohegan Sun in the barber shop. Double jumps, kings all around. My Grandpa Sam, the highest grandpa in the land. Taught me the rules. A touch is a move. Think before you move, the grand scheme, way before the Grand Hyatt or the MGM at Foxwood. My highest grandpa knew it all. I beat him only once in checkers when he was distracted, teaching me or telling me about how to fish, perch fishing, the real big ones, 5 inches long. My Grandpa Sam, the highest grandpa in the land.
Very nice, very nice. And this, we have a picture here of, are you the little boy in the corner?
Bottom right.
That's
I'm the
Judd.
little guy, bottom right. Mm-hmm. My great-grandmother is next to me, called Mom, my Grandpa Sam, and my dad in the back. I have no recollection of that picture, but doesn't Grandpa look like a barber? Really? Where's his hair?
That's great. And what inspired you to kind of write this poem?
I don't know. Strangely enough, I think this was the second poem I ever wrote. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just think that, you know, you think of your heritage, who you are, and you're kind of a sum of grandparents and uncles and aunts and brothers and so forth. And Grandpa was, he was old. I mean, I think he was probably 45 or 50 or 60 at the most when he cut my hair.
Right.
I'm trying to think, man, and subtract, multiply, okay.
Yes.
But he looked old to me.
Right.
And I remember the bathroom being like damp and had those little tiles on the wall.
Right.
And there he was snipping my hair, and I was sitting on these telephone books, you know, up really high, and it was scary.
So that imagery then lasts now many decades.
Yeah.
And
What do you mean
then
many decades? Are you joking?
and then the spark comes,
Yeah.
going to the neighborhood center and going through this stuff when someone said,
Yeah.
was there a particular instruction about why?
I don't remember what the prompt or the idea was on this. Maybe it was something having to do with someone that you knew from the past.
I gotcha.
Who's the person you know from the past that's most kind of interesting to you? Sometimes I remember what those are, and I have to say sometimes those prompts that are offered, sometimes I stray from them a little
Of
bit,
course, sure.
stretch it into something that I'm thinking about when I'm sitting there. So
Right,
it
right.
happened.
That's great.
It's crazy.
Okay, good.
Dave Madden is a fun guy to listen to. He seems always to find the most cheerful things to say about somebody that reads something. I mean, we have people that used to build their own boats, and we have people that had terrible childhoods on their own, and people that lived on farms and walked big distances to do things. And those things are really interesting to the public, I think.
Yes, yes. Certain kinds of memoirs are absolutely.
I don't know if this grandpa thing is interesting, but
it's true. It's
but
true.
he was the highest grandpa. 13 stories up. I
Yes.
mean, you'd be scared looking down when he was.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. All right, give us the second one. We have
All
the
right, let's
second
see.
poem,
Let's see. I want to take this one off.
and you tell us the
All right,
name.
Just a second.
Sure.
Okay, this one is a crazy. This is a crazy poem. This is a very recent activity that happened to me. I had knee surgery. I hurt my knee crazily, hurting myself on my own bicycle very recently in the most bizarre way, because I'm very physical
Right.
and I can do lots of stuff, but I hurt this damn knee and it blew up into a balloon.
Okay.
And there was nothing that could be done for it, so I had to have surgery. And I thought to myself, when I was going into L&M Hospital, maybe I should write about this, because it's scary. You don't know what's, you
Sure.
think they tell you everything, but
Right.
I don't know if they realize what's in somebody's head. But the
Sure.
thing that reminded me or made me think about it is because they were going to put me in anesthesia.
Right, and you're going to be knocked
And
out.
while I was there, ready for anesthesia, I had a paper and a pencil.
Oh.
And I wrote some fantasy kind of things that were in my mind at the time, and as I was coming out of the surgery. So this is a poem that I wrote called The Nurse. She didn't pass the muster.
Good, let's hear it.
All right, good. The drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. Buzz, 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 buzz. She didn't answer the call button. She wanted the minimum wage. She failed to answer, but she took her break anyway. The battery was dead. L&M Hospital, so dead was the hospital gurney. The gurney journey for knee surgery started, so dead, John Boy Judd, soon to be punctured by the anti-sneezologist, soon to be drugged, oh God, quick before the dinner bell, soon to be started after fasting. Where's that Bass-Weegian doctor man? All surgery tools and super glue. It's so cold in here. What's wrong with the heart pump? Check his vitals. Finally, drugs arrive. Count backwards. The big hand is on the 3, and the little one on the 2. The pulse meter beeped to the rhythm of the time of life. Comrade Putin, a 9th degree black belt now, shortly to approve our security, all. A lockdown. Silence the critics. Silence. Never another pussy riot screech in a Moscow cathedral. His words so KGB, a kosher wheel of fortune. plug in that Bass-Wegian doctor, ready to perform, so, all eyes masked. A Miley Cyrus video loaded in for some girly shock therapy. The contractions came, dismissed as false and positive. But the pain, John Boy Judd felt so twitchy. Stop, his water broke. Like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Where's that super glue when you need to mend to put him back together again? Code 10, Dr. Windsor, 2254. Dr. Windsor, dial 2254. John Boy Judd, coming out of sleep. Dr. Windsor adjusting the sleep number bed. Nurse, get down from his knee. He's coming out of sleep. How does it feel? Silence. The camera zooms in. All watching in silence, all zoomed. So faint it was, John Boy Judd saying faintly, "Pardon me, nurse, do you have any Grey Poupon?"
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
it does sound like it was under the influence of drugs.
Ooh. And you know, Harriet's, yes, of course, the concept is there. But it took about a day for that stuff to wear off.
Oh, I'm sure it
I don't know
did.
what maybe I'm susceptible to. I have to be careful, maybe.
Yeah, no more surgeries.
I don't know what it was, but yes, groggy. And I'm writing these notes, and I remember my wife was in the hospital room when I was, in the recovery area. And
Right.
You have your own room. That's cool too.
Yeah.
And I'm still groggy, and I'm saying, Dale, give me a paper and pencil. I gotta write this down. I heard this doctor being paged while I'm having my surgery. So anyhow, that's what happened. It was.
Now, it's interesting, you call yourself John Boy Judd. That's the
Yes.
name you give yourself in your work. And how does that come about, John Boy Judd?
Well, I actually wrote about that. It's a short story. When I was the first of two to be born, my brother and myself, there's a poem about my brother in here. Mom was expecting me, and unfortunately during the birthing process, it wasn't a natural birth. She had to have a C-section. But in 1942, C-sections, that was a dangerous operation. I mean, you have to do the stuff there.
Right.
So before I was born, my father, Leonard, and my mother, Bobby, decided that I would be named John, being named after my mother's father, John. But a couple of days or 3 days afterwards, my mother was still groggy. This was a really operation, and she was groggy. And my father decided in his great wisdom that I wasn't going to be John, I was going to be Judd.
Okay.
So the name John Boy Judd. But just one more sentence. When the nurse brought me to my mother
Right.
for the first time, the nurse says, "Well, Bobby, here is your son, Judd." And she says, No, my son's John. You take that guy away. But the strange part about it, and I wouldn't know that story because I was
Obviously,
just
right. So
birthed.
somebody told you it.
My mother told me the story on
Yeah.
how disappointed she was for most of her life that I was Judd.
Well, did she ever call you John?
No, never,
Okay,
never. It
all
was
right.
just a funny thing she said.
Sure, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
John Boy Judd, so
Right. Okay.
my
that's-
wife Dale, sometimes I call her in a poem Skinny Legs Dale, or sometimes Dizzy Dale.
Right. Okay.
And
right.
my father, Rich Man Lenny, he was very rich.
Okay.
And my mother, Flora Bobby, in contrast to my name being John or Judd, she originally was named Flora, but that was a weird name in those days, and
Okay.
she changed her own name to Bobby.
Okay.
So she was never called Flora. I guess we had this synergy, the two of us.
Right. All right. So let's hear our third poem.
Okay.
And this This one actually has a international flavor to it.
Oh, let's see what we're going to do here. Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
This is about my other grandmother on my mom's side, which talked about mom.
Right.
And she was a European woman who came to America through Canada and then down into America, met her husband, and they were married in New York City. I don't know much about what their life was like in New York City. Eventually, they both came to Chicago, and he, being a rather well-known engineer, he actually built a bridge over one of the rivers in New York with his father, whose name was Adolph Candle. They were engineering people. And so this is a poem about her. She was Romanian. I don't know much about Romania, but she told me a lot about it. And over the years, I've discovered that perhaps Romania has gypsies.
Oh, yes.
So,
Because when you
and
finish,
I remember her being this kind of European kind of look with the glasses, skinny glasses, and this kind of roly-poly hair, you know. And I didn't know anything about gypsies, but this poem is about gypsies.
okay, all right,
Okay,
then
so-
I'll tell you some other stories from that part of the world.
Oh, okay. All right,
Because
great.
my
So-
grandmother talked about gypsies.
well, I have some gypsy images, and I hope they're the correct ones.
Okay, well, who
This
knew?
is this I called. It was a spring dream in Bucharest that he saw his first gypsy. The drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. The spring of his awakening started at a rough stone bridge. A rough stone bridge near the Danube, over a dark Romanian tributary stream in Bucharest. Here, John Boy Judd began the dream of his first awakening near the dark Black Sea. Born in Romania, his grandma Rosie, who spoke Yiddish and Romanian and Romany, she was, in his dream, the dream. She, with those yellow fingernails and those wire spectacles, she helped him glimpse it that spring in Bucharest, the day he glimpsed, oh God help him, his first gypsy. The spring of his awakening, campsites with tents and little dirty kids at intersections of dusty roads, dust, sparkling in spring's first light, so dusty. Just near the Transylvanian mountains, look, she says, John Boy Judd, see? Just like his first book, look, see, look, spot, see, spot. Look, she says, in this dreaming spring of his awakening, that guy with the silk babushka, the babushka wound around his head, she says, that's my gypsy, the one with no socks in his boots. It was way after November 13th, after the feast of St. Andrew's, patron saint of wolves, when he saw it again. Now spring, she points him out to him in the spring of his awakening. A shapeshifter. Superstition has it, a gypsy now, and then a hairy wolf. Superstition only for them that can't dream. House of devils, tarot cards, bats with wings and antlers and sharp wolf claws. And now in the spring of his awakening, paprika flying, a dusty powder so red, gypsy red, sticking to the last pile of snow. Now, fully spring. Dreaming endless music, he saw his grandma Rosie's gypsy again. A devilish music man, her gypsy of squeaky violins, Eyes closed and dreaming, John Boy Judd imagines wolves dancing around a fire. Springs of spring, sparks of spring, this spring of his awakening. Other musicians with scarlet dictos around their neck, bringing in the spring. You know, a gypsy can't read or write, but it can mark each new spring with a new silk babushka around its head. Now John Boy Judd is in his awakening. John Boy Judd wanted to know and wanted to own his own gypsy. And it came to pass. She saved his life, his Grandma Rosie, in a Windy City beach on Lake Michigan. A different first day of spring's awakening. She said gypsies hate the wind, and she did too. Wearing her rimmed glasses and a one-piece bathing suit, suddenly she was running fast on all four hairy legs, wolf legs, scooping him up from under the wave. Oh God, that little John Boy Judd saved and revived from dissolving in the turf. They were linked, Grandma Rosie and John Boy Judd. That new spring in the Windy City, finally, he came to own his own gypsy. Grandma Rosie was his gypsy.
Mm-hmm. That's very nice. That's very nice. It's interesting about gypsies. My grandmother is from my father's mother was from the Carpathian Mountains, which is what you're describing, where actually 3 countries today were there, and that is Romania, Hungary, and Poland, which was then parts of it the Russians controlled and parts of it were controlled by the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And my grandmother spoke Hungarian but knew Romanian. And it's funny you say that because she lived in the mountains, and part of living in the mountains is she talks about wolves. I have a tape of hers, which I made, I don't know, decades ago. She died in 1987 when she was almost 99, or she was 99. So we have this story about her and her grandfather and her family lived in the mountains. I'm not sure what they did, something with trees. They produced a certain kind of tree that they use for very decorative cabinetry, and they used to bring it to Budapest, where they were actually, where it was sold. And she was always talking about gypsies and wolves. It seems that in the Carpathians, that's what they always talked about. And she had great stories about wolves following her with her grandfather on this cart where they would go into the forest and find the wood. And my father said that they must have lived in this part of the world for centuries because unlike most of the Jews of Eastern Europe, they actually owned their land. So it's when I had not read this before. I'm reading this. I'm thinking about my grandmother sitting there telling me all these wild stories, and of course, she came over here in 1905 from what was then she considered to be Hungary, and it's funny that this reawakens my thinking. And I do know other people whose families came from the Carpathians, and these are always stories: gypsies and wolves.
I had only one occurrence in person to visit a gypsy area, and I happened to be in Ireland, and there was an intersection of a road, and there was a campsite sitting around where some people, and the people we were with, friends of us from the Bahamas who also had a house in Ireland, said, "Oh, those are the gypsies. We don't mess with them."
Right,
so
right.
it's kind of good. Well, let's try another.
Yes, let's
try another
dash
one.
on.
I want to get to this one, but when I want to get to this one, I want to make sure that we can see my shirt. So I'm going to kind of move a little bit
There
here.
it is.
Oh, boy.
Science fiction.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Right? What's the top say?
All right, the top one is Avram, out of the galaxy with Commander Zirk.
Oh, right.
Avram's my brother.
Okay.
Okay, The drummer, she was found in a ditch, and the cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. Zoned and floating, all sides up, drifting in space so open. So, the mission, first so unclear and so dear, so deadly, splat! John Boy Judd, all locked up, his wrists are exploding with electric wires, joined and controlled directly by Commander Zirk. So zoned the Zirk man too. A century's journey, shooting through the galaxy, whoosh, cracking through the Jupiter light in seconds, duck that moon, and now so controlled by Zirk John Boy Judd. Years it was planned, driven by wrist-controlled hybrid pulse drives at 31 times the speed of light. A new colony soon, without Lord Dunmore, Queen Dalloway herself, commanded by Zirk. I could smell her rotting scales, so brine, so salty, brine from the beginning of time. Her 4 eyes, so long gone with nothing to see in the darkness, speeding along our 6 senses, just licking and kicking at a sharp warp speed to the party. Oh God, so hungry. Quick, bring in that pumpkin tort, whipped cream and all, floating like a sludge. Splat! It hit Avram's client, Avram's brother of space and time. He, recording and stamping, he, by the clerk, all duty paid, overpaid, all legal now, whipped cream in a vacuum, a mist, splat. It hit Avram's client's eye. He, the keeper of legal equilibrium. From Earth to Starbase 22, Avram so titled, courtly of earwax, of ear spoon, the cold, dull ear. Now dealing with his client with an eye of mist, like a London town mist. Avram, the vacuum cleaner of torts. Avram, my brother of space and time. John Boy Judd, he can't feel any of his feet. Some dropped off along the way, just after taking off in 1942, when he first flew over the nest, all cuckoo, and landed with us to be commanded by Zirk. Finally, the mission was defined, established well, over 16.31 flushes ago, by Queen Dalloway herself, sitting on her throne, starships with gravity drives, turning on, changing directions, the entire fleet focused to a single spike, piercing the fabric of time, riding the gravity wave to Yuma, with sands and beaches of Lucayan happiness, finally paradise. Let's toast to science, the fiction of the old life, invented to control our thoughts. Science kept in check like formulas memorized. Out here, it is for real. Science is what you do, John Boy Judd. How you win against time with Zirk in command, so lonely, John Boy Judd. Slide your good foot, hop on your last foot, put on those flash goggles, pop the number 27 tiger pill, all double layered and coated, time-stamped the positive pill. Beginning to explore, John Boy Judd, commanded by Zirk. Finally, the galaxy had no limit. You're in for the real, all science, having the time of your 6th life fully extended, stretched fully, the voyage to paradise, not a bit science fiction.
So this poem is dedicated to your brother, who is writer of science fiction. And what's the shirt say? After Roswell.
Return
to Roswell. Is that the name of the book?
The Return to Roswell by Martin Rosen.
Okay, so people who are interested in science fiction, inspired by his brother's poetry, can go and pick that up. And what is the name of the publishing company?
Silver Alien Press.
Very appropriate.
www. Silver Alien Press.
All right, and they are a press that deals with science fiction.
Yes, yes, yes. And I think he's writing his second book.
Good.
I'm hoping that my name will be in it.
All right,
Maybe
John Boy
under
Judd.
changed.
Yes, under another name.
Under
right?
another name.
Another name.
Yeah.
So that's an ode to your brother's writing.
Right. Not only that, actually he's a lawyer.
Okay.
And he's retired recently. And he was a personal injury attorney.
Oh.
So torts, things against others, things that happen, like sludge from a space travel in your client's eye, that's something Marty can deal with.
All right, great. So we have two more poems to read, and we have a little time that we need to kind of make it go a little bit faster. So I know, and I don't want to hurry or rush because that's the worst thing for a poet. So I want to read the next poem, which is The Colonel's Walk with Harriet.
That's not you.
Not me.
So I'm going to read it right away.
Okay,
this is
right.
This is a poem about Wilcox Park in Westerly and the beautiful Victorian Park. The Colonel's Walk with Harriet. The drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. Just before New Year's Eve in the year 1900, she whispered in his ears, "I can make you a grand walking park for you, the Colonel, a dream to walk in each day with Harriet, remembering." So she built the dreamy park the Colonel walks in, now so remembered. It was this remembered walk more than a century ago. She dreamed, so dreamed, the Colonel walks in today. "You're so Victorian, Harriet, the Colonel says, reminded of his victories. Early morning gunpowder smoke, the wetness of the dew's turf yet to be pranced, upright in victory always. She so dominant, beautiful Harriet, both now marching, arm in arms, dominant she, tugging him back and forth, side to side, tugging on her paths, him just trying to do his duty as commanding as possible. John Boy Judd, flying like a bird overhead, watching their private dream parade. The Colonel takes her behind a Japanese cut-leaf maple, dreaming of pawing her long, sheer white petticoats, so victorious, but still the distance between them, more than a century. The Colonel buttoned his silver gray coat tight against the breeze, so Confederate his coat looked, black eyes and sly beard marching past the gazebo, his army's band tamping out another hoped victory. He was Harriet's slave. From Confederate times, he didn't care. What a laugh, a real laugh-in. Years later, he remembers on TV just that local Ruth Buzzy, that telephone gal, with whose her stone marker marked the exact spot that he first licked a kiss to Harriet, his mistress. Bench after bench, they passed. Arm in arms they pranced, and finally they sat to rest at the feet of another commander, Cristoforo Colombo, the victorious Italian explorer. And they sat both on that pink Granite City bench, Westerly granite. They sat on the animal bench, both out of breath in this dream, both. Now, a century later, every day the Colonel tugs, and every day he tugs John Boy Judd past that frozen bronze metal statue of Harriet. Harriet high above the fountain, Harriet looking down as the colonel passes, Harriet above the water fountain. When he barks, are his barks smiling barks at her? While marking his conquests in New Year's Eve in that year, 1900 still. The colonel's walk with Harriet, still remembered.
And of course, the colonel is your pooch.
The colonel is a dog. The colonel walks at Wilcox Park every day with John Boy Judd.
Yes.
And he sees Harriet, and he's not sure what it is.
Right.
Who is
right.
that Harriet?
And he happens to be a Schnauzer, of which is one of my favorite dogs. Dog breeds anyway. I have a former owner of 2 Schnauzers, so yes, absolutely. That is absolutely adorable. And for people who have not visited Wilcox Park, it is a must, even in the cold weather. It is just
especially year-round. It really is a year-round park, walking park.
Absolutely, you can walk. People exercise in the park. It is wonderful. There's all kinds of shows, and the art show is at the park. The band, the Westerly Band, plays in the park. So it's a great place to visit. So we want to finish off with one more poem.
Well, if we have time, this is a kind of a poem that I wrote as I've written a lot of poems about the Bahamas. I wanted to read this poem. It's kind of at the end of our time, and it's called, in Bahamian kind of talk, Dis We Old, Dis My Vessel. The drummer, she was found in a ditch. The cop, he died in the arms of Princess Margaret. Dis we old, too long a journey, 1,000 times before, one more time, too old, a single-masted sailing ship, sailing, push off, all self, too old, but determined, too long a journey, 150 miles, seas, open to the breeze, to the gale, push away, just 3 days, self, just, lonely, flapping in the breeze, Nassau, the goal, stress on 90-year-old bones, a journey. Tins of corned beef, rice to boil, stars so clear, even to the dim eyes, target so real, just one more time, self. Goats are the cargo, mutton on the deck, all tied up and flapping legs, bleep, bleep, ready, meat ready to eat. Okay, it wasn't not so hard, I made it. 90-year-old bones. Hey, Kaiser, you here again? You're last? What? Welcome. Bones be bad, 290. Nearly tasted the sea badly this time, the last time. Any conch stew? I'm so hungry, so 90. Trip back was empty. I so empty. Bad seas, just one last time, but friendly shores, home, friends, welcome me at the dock, dizzy and lost without a goal. Old one is lost, 90-year bones, all done, I done. A grave they dug, and I inside, still tossing from the seas. A grave they dug, and I'm gone. Stones around me grave, shaped by me friends. Not like other graves, all mine. William, Willie, Kaiser, Gibson, Smith. Stones are shaped around me grave, flat at my stern, straight on my sides, starboard and bow. pointed to a point. This is my vessel to welcome me home, finally.
Well, that's quite lovely. That is your kind of ode to the Bahamas,
Wow.
and obviously to their fishing and sailing and shipping
And
culture.
men and women sailed by themselves on a single-masted sailing ship, miles and miles, sometimes from the Bahamas all the way to Turks and Caicos or to Haiti, by themselves, eating themselves, building their fire on top of their boat. And it wasn't unusual. People 90 years old, still sailing. And this is a real story, the tragedy, but the good life of someone 90 years old making that last final trip to Nassau, cargo of goats, and coming home and being deceased right on the dock,
Wow, okay.
digging his grave, putting him in, making it a little special shape, starboard, port, bow. What could be better?
Right. Now,
Finally.
how did it come that you found a place to live in the Bahamas?
Oh boy, that's a good story. Actually, Dale and I lived in Chicago. We have Lake Michigan. It's 90 miles wide,
Right.
400 and some miles long. To us, it was like an ocean.
Yes.
Sandy, beautiful beaches. And we just kind of liked, that kind of life on the beach, watching the shore, watching the ripple of the water. So island living was something we really sought after. And we went to a number of different places. The Bahamas is great. People speak English. It's fun to live there. It's a calm, quiet, pleasant place to live with people that are fun to be with.
Right.
Small little islands.
Right.
So,
And are there many Americans who actually live in the Bahamas?
300,000 people live in the Bahamas. About 165,000 or so live on the main island called New Providence, the capital being Nassau.
Okay.
About another 60,000 live in Freeport area on Grand Bahama.
Okay.
But all the rest of the people, maybe 40,000, live on 40 inhabited islands. There are 400 islands in the Bahamas, or
Wow.
maybe 600. But 40 are inhabited. The island we live on is Long Island. It's very long. It's 90 miles long and only about 3 miles wide. Has the deep, rough ocean on one side and
Yes.
the calm sea with beautiful beaches on the other. We just fell in love.
Okay.
That was it. You find a place.
Right. Right.
And,
And are you a sailor? Do you sail?
We have a fishing boat.
A fishing boat.
So
okay.
yeah, so pull them in.
Okay. So you have a boat that you go not a commercial fishing boat.
No,
okay.
a small boat.
Okay. Yeah.
Close to shore.
Right. Right.
Catch those great fish, mahi-mahi and
right.
tuna and wahoo. Great eating.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
And fun,
Yes.
excitement.
And how did you come to live the other part of the time in southeast Connecticut?
We had a big house in Chicagoland in the suburbs, and we were trying to kind of downsize ourselves. At one time, we still had the house in Chicago, and we wanted to do something on the East Coast. Became fascinating to us. Chicagoans think they're kind of the center, but we know New York and Boston. This is where the
Right.
world is as well. And we explored the area, and we liked the river of the Pawcatuck River,
Sure.
separating westerly from Pawcatuck or from Stonington area, and we settled there, renovated a little old-time, turn-of-the-century laundry building into a residence. So
Oh, okay.
it's a fun place to live here.
Oh,
it's
absolutely,
great, a great
absolutely. Now I
place.
would assume that you escape in the coldest time of the year to the
Oh,
Bahamas. Because
oh.
what would be the point
Why
of owning
why are
and-
we here today? Did you force me to come here?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So it's this island place, but you're not far from the ocean.
We're right on the ocean.
No
We're
matter
100
where.
feet above the water, very high up. We can see all of the sun rises on the east side, the rocky, tough, hot side of Long Island with the rocky cliffs and
Right.
beach down below. But then turn around and look at the sunsets behind you
Right.
at the beautiful soft sea. So it's great.
Oh,
It's
it
great.
sounds
but,
wonderful.
Answering your question,
Yes.
there's about 150 foreign persons that live on Long Island that has 3,000 people total.
Oh, so
So
there's
it's
quite
not a
amount.
big place.
Right.
And the road being 90 miles long, you don't see a lot of people every day, but it's a friendly culture. Wonderful place.
That's great. Well, I want to thank Judd for coming today, an interesting man who's lived in lots of places and has shared with us using literature, his own poetry, to tell us all about his family, his grandma and his grandpa, and people in the Bahamas. So it's been a kind of fun activity. As we approach the new year, I'm always looking for more guests. So if you know or you are a musician, an artist, a poet, a writer who would like to come on my show, we'd love to invite you. If you represent an arts organization of any kind, we'd love to come on and tell us about what it is you do and to promote the arts and culture of our very beautiful communities. So I want to wish you all good cheer, Happy New Year, and hope to see you again in 2015. And may all your best dreams come true. May your most difficult New Year's resolutions come true. And so we look forward to seeing you again next year. And this is Harriet Grayson, and I am the producer and host of Community Culture Showcase.